In a world obsessed with visibility, where every action is broadcast and every thought is shared, we are told to be seen. Flaunt your wins. Announce your plans, showcase your success. The modern creed worships exposure as if it were power itself. But what if that's a lie? What if the very act of showing off, of loudly advertising your strength, is the quickest way to lose it? Niccolo Machiavelli, the man often painted as merely ruthless, was far more than a cold strategist. He was a careful observer of power in its rawest form, and what he noticed again and again was a simple but dangerous truth. Those who reveal too much, too early, become the easiest targets. The peacock may dazzle the eye with its beauty, but isn't it also the most obvious prey in the forest? Its feathers scream for attention, and so do the arrows that follow. The powerful do not proclaim their power. They let others feel it often too late to resist or respond. Machiavelli lived during a time when silence was more than a virtue, it was survival. In the deadly politics of Renaissance Florence, power was not a trophy you displayed. It was a dagger hidden beneath your cloak. The streets echoed with the downfall of men who mistook attention for strength. Leaders were destroyed not because they were weak, but because they couldn't resist the urge to show the world how strong they were. Machiavelli learned, strength, once flaunted, begins to erode. The strongest man in the room is rarely the loudest. He is the one who watches, who calculates, who waits while others, desperate for admiration, reveal their flaws and motives. And yet, what do we see today? We announce our goals on social media before even taking the first step. We live stream our victories as they happen. We share our strategies, our doubts, even our relationships, all in the name of being real or authentic. But what we call authenticity, Machiavelli might have called strategic suicide. Because in power, as in life, the loud become predictable, and the predictable become vulnerable. Machiavelli once wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." Those words are not casual advice. They are a warning. Appearances invite judgment. Exposure invites attack. The more you reveal, the easier it becomes for others to label you, challenge you, or dismantle you entirely in the court of power. Mystery is not a weakness. It is armor. Consider the brash entrepreneur who boasts about plans before they're realized.
Often.
Are those plans stolen, undermined, or used against them? Think of the loudest voice in the meeting room, dominating every discussion. They may appear commanding, but over time, you quietly lose credibility and respect. Now picture the one who says little but acts with precision. Their silence commands the room. People adjust their behavior in their presence not because they are loud, but because they are undeniable. Why does this dynamic exist? Because speaking too soon is a form of commitment. An early commitment is limitation. When you declare your hand, you give others the chance to prepare, to counter, to strike. To speak is to take a position. To show off is to display your weapons. And the moment you do that, you allow your rivals to plan around you. Machiavelli understood. True power is not in being celebrated, but in being underestimated. The fox survives not by boasting of its cleverness, but by hiding its cunning until it's too late. The lion rules not by endless roaring, but by the chilling silence of potential violence, force withheld. Modern culture, however, confuses noise with dominance. We are trained, almost conditioned, to equate presence with posting, leadership, with loudness and power, with constant performance. But here's the uncomfortable truth Machiavelli understood. The more you show, the more you owe. Visibility isn't just exposure, it's a contract. The world starts to expect more from you, and the moment you fall short, it remembers, judges, and it doesn't forgive easily. Being seen creates a burden, a weight that performance must continually lift. When performance falters, even briefly, the backlash is swift, but silence owes no one anything. It creates space. Space to think, to move, to maneuver unseen and unrestricted. No applause is required. No explanation is needed. This isn't just theory, it's human psychology. People do not fear what they fully understand. They fear what they cannot predict. When your every move is broadcast, your patterns become familiar. become explainable, readable, almost routine. And when your thoughts are always shared, your mind becomes accessible and eventually controllable. But when you choose to remain quiet, measured, observant, composed, something interesting happens. Others begin to guess, they speculate, they analyze. And in their guessing, they reveal more about themselves than you ever reveal about yourself. Machiavelli. If he were watching today's world of staged ambition and curated success, would likely shake his head not out of disdain for ambition, but because he saw how fragile it becomes when exposed too early. He understood the danger of declaring too much too soon. He once wrote, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." Understand what that means. He wasn't glorifying betrayal. He was recognizing a deeper truth about change. Your past promises, once public, become shackles. They lock you into old expectations, outdated versions of yourself. And when you try to evolve, the world resists. It accuses you of inconsistency. But silence is freedom. It is the hidden door through which you can pivot, adjust, evolve, without needing to explain yourself, without apology. Those who master real power also master restraint. Imagine two warriors. One enters the arena beating his chest, declaring victory before the first blow is struck. The crowd erupts. He raises his sword with pride. The other enters without a word. He locks eyes with his opponent, says nothing. His body is calm, precise like a shadow before the storm. Which one would you fear more? We don't fear the loud. We fear the unknown, the unseen, the unpredictable. And that is the lesson the modern man must remember. When you showcase your money, your body, your relationship, your next big move, you think you're signaling power. You think you're inspiring awe. But in truth, you're highlighting vulnerabilities. You're painting a target on your back. You're calling for envy, for sabotage, for opposition. Worse still, you are training yourself to depend on validation. If you start needing it, thirsting for it. You base your worth not on what you do, but on what others see. And once that happens, you're no longer free. You become a performer on someone else's stage. Applause becomes your addiction. You chase perception, not progress. And power, quiet. Lasting power slips through your fingers. Machiavelli warned us plainly. It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose between the two. And true fear doesn't come from noise or pride. It comes from distance, from mystery, from what cannot be read. The constant need to be admired. It is the seed of self-destruction, because the moment your identity is shaped by how others see you, you surrender your inner compass. You start dressing for the spotlight instead of walking your path. So what's the alternative? Become unreadable. Move in silence. Execute without announcement. Speak only when your words sharpen the blade. Let ... results, not declarations. Speak, but only when necessary. This is not cowardice, it is control. Control over your narrative. Control over your opponent's perception. Control over your future. Machiavelli never advised people to hide out of fear. His message was far more calculated. Reveal only what serves your objectives. Speak only when your words shift the balance in your favor. He understood that true influence doesn't come from being constantly seen. It comes from being quietly felt. The most enduring power is subtle, invisible, yet unforgettable. So, the next time you feel the urge to share your plans, prove your worth, or flaunt your edge paws, ask yourself, who actually gains from this display? Is it you or the ones now quietly preparing to use that information against you? Remember this. The strongest forces in the world are invisible. Gravity, time, pressure. These forces shape oceans, bend steel, move mountains without ever raising their voice. Be like them. Be still. Be sharp. Be silent. When a man speaks before he moves, he gives his enemies time to prepare, gives his rivals something to observe, analyze, and predict. He becomes a map, visible, traceable, understandable. And once you're predictable, you're no longer powerful. You become manageable, containable. Machiavelli understood this at an intimate level. His writings weren't just about politics, were psychological blueprints. He knew that power begins not with dominance, but with discipline. Not with controlling others, but with mastering yourself. And at the core of that mastery lies one essential skill: knowing when to withhold. Why? Do people show off because they crave certainty? They want admiration? They need validation, external proof of their value. But the Machiavellian mind does not seek admiration, it seeks leverage. Nothing gives you greater leverage than silence. Not passive silence, not fearful silence, but intentional, calculated, dangerous silence. The kind of silence that creates space where doubt grows, a space where others begin to overthink, overreach, overexpose themselves while you observe without being seen. There is a clear pattern across all levels of real power. The higher someone rises, the less they speak, the more weight their words carry, the more carefully they are used. And when such a person does speak, people don't listen for what is said, they listen for what was not said. The beginner explains everything. The master explains nothing. He doesn't need to. His presence is enough. His confidence is silent. His influence precedes his words. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said, "It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles." The true power of a man comes before his position. It is built over time through restraint, discipline, and unshakable control. Not just in words, but in behavior, in posture, in emotional response. Show-offs are easy to provoke. They take the bait, they react loudly, they respond to every slight, defend every criticism. And in doing so, they offer enemies the exact material needed to pull them down. But the Machiavellian operator? He doesn't flinch, doesn't explain. He doesn't react not because he's weak, but because he's playing a deeper game. He's not chasing applause. He's positioning himself for power. Think of the most truly influential people you know, the ones who don't just speak, but shape outcomes. Are they the ones shouting in every room? Or are they the ones whose silence shifts the atmosphere, whose stillness makes others uneasy? This is the power ... of strategic invisibility. When you're loud, people track you. When you're quiet, people imagine you, and what they imagine is almost always more powerful than what is real. This is the paradox of perception. The seen is limited, the unseen is limitless. Visibility confines you, imagination expands you. This is why ancient kings sat behind veils, why emperors were glimpsed only in rare ceremonial moments. It's not because they feared their subjects, but because they understood the rules of influence. Once you become common, once your image is everywhere, you lose your edge. You become familiar. And familiarity breeds indifference. Modern man breaks this principle every single day. We live in an era where people willingly leak their weaknesses. For attention, where confessions are monetized and vulnerability is rewarded with likes. Privacy is no longer seen as strength, but misread as secrecy or guilt. Subtlety. It's often mistaken for absence. This cultural shift explains why the average man struggles to command lasting respect, because he no longer understands the deep, commanding value of mystery. Machiavelli warned us centuries ago, men judge more by the eye than by the hand. In other words, people value what they see more than what you do. So what happens when you show too much? You reveal every step of the process, the doubts, the stumbles, the frustration. You weaken the magic. You reduce the impact of the result. The magician who explains his trick doesn't earn admiration. He loses it. Understand this clearly. Your achievements don't speak louder when you broadcast them. They speak softer. Every word used to justify yourself dilutes the power of what you've done. Every unnecessary detail is ammunition for your enemies. And every boast, every public declaration, shifts the spotlight from your accomplishments to your ego. But the disciplined man, the Machiavellian man, operates differently. He doesn't announce his victories. He multiplies them in silence, allows others to guess, interpret, whisper, wonder. And the more they wonder, the more they respect. Because what is hidden tends to be feared. What is unclear is often revered. In that respect, the kind rooted in awe and speculation translates into real power. Held without ever having to ask for it. True power is not begged for, it's earned by presence. This isn't about being invisible. It's about being strategic in how you are seen. There are moments to step into the light. But those moments must be chosen, not craved. They must be intentional, not impulsive. A lion doesn't roar all day. He waits. He watches. He calculates. And when the roar finally comes, carries weight. It means something. The danger of constant self-promotion isn't just that it exposes you, it alters you. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to perform instead of act. You begin chasing applause instead of outcomes. You start dressing, not for purpose, but for reaction. And without realizing it, you become a caricature of the very thing that once made you dangerous. This is the trap of the showman. The moment he becomes addicted to his audience, he loses himself. He no longer leads, he follows their gaze, their attention, their approval. And in doing so, he trades substance for spotlight. Machiavelli or Machiavelli, if we follow this thread, would see this plainly. He would not pity the showman. He would warn him, don't play to the crowd, play above them. Let them whisper, let them wonder. But never let them see you completely. Because once you are fully seen, you are no longer revered. You are analyzed, compared, measured, and diminished. Mystique is the shadow of real power. Lose that mystique, and you lose your edge. So how do you build that mystique? You remove the need to prove, you replace ... display with discipline. You begin to act without explaining. You begin to win without celebrating. You say less, but what you do say carries weight. And in doing so, you shift the dynamic entirely. You force the world to lean in, to watch closely, not because you shouted, but because of what you chose not to say. That's the quiet war, Machiavelli fought in every sentence he wrote. War not for attention, but for control. Not for fame, but for influence. And this war is even more relevant today, in a time where every man is pressured to speak, where every app, every feed, every post demands attention. The one who can master silence, who can remain unmoved by noise, becomes a god among echoes. The strong man is not the one who demands your attention. He is the one who doesn't need it. His presence alone forces others to take notice. The greatest advantage a man can hold in an age addicted to constant noise is his ability to remain still and let others reveal themselves. Because in the court of power, every boast, every overshare, every impulsive explanation, it's all a reveal. And every reveal is a risk. What do people reveal? Weakness, insecurity, a craving to be seen. And that craving, Machiavelli knew, is exactly what brings men to ruin. He saw it in the collapse of princes, in the betrayal of allies, in the self-sabotage of leaders who mistook attention for strength and performance for persuasion. They believed that the louder they were, stronger they appeared. But real power has nothing to prove. In the end, they were outmaneuvered by those who said less, observed more, and acted only when the moment gave them absolute advantage. To truly understand this, you must first let go of the illusion that being understood is always valuable. It's not. In fact, it's often a trap. The moment people fully understand you is the moment they stop respecting you. Why? Because they can now predict you. They can map you, measure you, imitate you, or worse, surpass. You, Machiavelli, didn't write for those who wanted to be liked. He wrote for those who wanted to endure. And if you wish to endure, you must become unreadable, unreliable, elusive, not in character, but in method, he wrote. A prudent man should always follow in the path trodden by great men and imitate those who have been supreme. But what did these great men have in common? Profound respect for concealment. Caesar crossed the Rubicon in silence. Borges didn't declare intentions until his enemies were trapped. Even Machiavelli himself, he buried his greatest truths in allegory, in subtle implication, never in loud instruction. He knew truth is most powerful when it is least expected, and the world has always punished those who reveal too much. Never more than today, because now the surveillance is not just governmental, it's cultural, it's voluntary, it's self-inflicted. People no longer guard their secrets, they give them away. They offer up their vulnerabilities in posts. They document every triumph, every failure, every passing emotion, believing that visibility equals power. It doesn't it gives power to others to watch, to compare, to judge, to attack. Once you've shared, you've surrendered control. You cannot defend what you've already given away. And once your thoughts, emotions, and intentions are public, they are no longer yours. They belong to interpretation, manipulation, even weaponization. That's why Machiavelli would urge you to build what he called fortresses of the mind, places no one can enter, places where your true intentions are known only to you, where your ambitions are not announced, they are executed, where your process is hidden until the result is undeniable. Those who build in silence build stronger. There is a reason architects don't display unfinished blueprints to critics. There is a reason generals do not reveal their battle plans the night before war. And there is a reason kings never ask the crowd for permission before they act. Because in the game of power, anticipation is more valuable than exposure. The unknown is leverage. The things people can't see are often what shape their behavior the most. A silent room filled with tension speaks louder than a room filled with noise. An unspoken thought can shift more minds than a speech. That is the difference. Between the performer and the strategist, the Machiavellian doesn't simply control people. He controls what they are allowed to know. He curates perception. He chooses his moments. And in that selective silence, he plants doubt, curiosity, even fear. This is where the ordinary man fails. He feels tension and rushes to relieve it. He feels doubt and talks to hide it. He feels triumph and cannot help but declare it. And in doing so, he teaches the world how to decode him. He gives away his pattern, his tells, his process. He broadcasts his emotions, and others take notes. They learn how to predict him, control him, and ultimately defeat him. But the dangerous man, the man who wins, he resists. He learns to hold the line, to stay seated in discomfort, to resist the seductive pull of applause. He does not speak to impress, speaks only when silence no longer serves him. This is not the silence of fear, it is not passivity. It is control. There is a world of difference between being quiet and being unreadable. A man who is merely quiet disappears into the background. But a man who is unreadable becomes the center of gravity in any room, not because he demands attention, but because he withholds it. He shapes perception not through words, but through mystery. He gives just enough to provoke curiosity, and then he lets silence do the rest. That curiosity turns into power. People begin to fill in the blanks with their fears, their hopes, their insecurities. You become a mirror, and that mirror distorts their judgment in your favor. Look at history's most powerful figures. They all understood this dynamic. Churchill didn't speak often, but when he did, every word struck like thunder. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote not for the crowd, but for himself. His meditations were private. His strength was internal. Even modern CEOs, the ones who lead, not just manage, speak less than they listen. They don't perform for applause. They play for position. Machiavelli saw through the illusions of showmanship. He knew that charisma fades, that applause is temporary, that fame is a fragile shield. But a mind that is disciplined, composed, hidden, that mind is unbreakable. A man like that can't be read, can't be cornered, can't be icily defeated, because he is playing the long game. So ask yourself, in a world where everyone is performing, what happens when you don't? What happens when you refuse to explain yourself? When you decline to show your process, to document every move for attention, you gain space, you gain clarity, you gain control. People begin to talk about you instead of to you. They speculate, they project, they react while you move in silence, with precision, force, without needing permission. That is how empires are built, not with noise, but with moves that cannot be anticipated. Not with validation, but with vision that is untouched by the crowd's need to watch. Machiavelli would say, to rule without resistance, you must first remove the need to be seen. Let the crowd chase attention. Let them overexpose. burn themselves in the spotlight. You remain in the shadows, not as a coward, but as the architect of a power they will only recognize once it's too late. And when they do, when the world finally sees what you've built, they won't know how you got there. Why? Because you never showed your hand. You never shouted. You didn't flex. You didn't compete for their attention. You just moved there. Is a law of nature most men forget. The loudest animal is rarely the deadliest. The wolf doesn't bark before it bites. The serpent doesn't hiss before it strikes. The storm doesn't send a press release, it arrives, suddenly, without apology, without warning, without mercy. And Machiavelli understood this deeply. In every line he wrote, in every ruler he studied, in every betrayal he chronicled, one theme echoed louder than any declaration: silence. When used strategically, is more lethal than any speech. It is not absence. It is dominance disguised. Its opposite: display. It's boasting, theatrical self-exposure. These aren't signs of strength. They are fatal flaws in any man who seeks to rise. Because in the hunger to be seen, to be admired, to be applauded, a man gives away his position, his strategy, his timing. Yet today we live inside a theater of noise, status updates, motivational slogans, behind-the-scenes vlogs, minute by minute, personal brands, everyone broadcasting, everyone performing. And what most fail to realize is that performance is not power. In fact, it's often a substitute for it, because those who possess real power have no need to prove it. They don't perform because they don't depend on approval or validation. It doesn't come from likes or recognition. It comes from results. It's delivered without warning. The moment you attempt to prove your power, you unintentionally admit that it's in question. And once it's in question, you invite reaction. That reaction can become opposition. Worse, it tells the world exactly where to aim. You expose your position before you've secured the ground. You give away the element of surprise. In Machiavellian terms, that's not just weakness, it's strategic malpractice. He once wrote, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." So what does the fool do? He reveals himself. He demands to be seen. He insists on being recognized. And in doing so, he hands his enemies the very information they need to destroy him. The wise man, by contrast, moves with subtlety. He acts quietly, precisely, and only later, if ever, does the world learn what he has done. By then it's too late. The move is made. The result is irreversible. Let's be clear. This is not about being timid. This is not silence born of fear. This is the silence of supremacy. It is a silence so stable, so self-contained, that it cannot be rattled by trends, opinions, or insult. It is the quiet of a man who does not need permission. It doesn't wait for applause. It doesn't care if the crowd notices. Because the man who shows off has already lost the game. He's turned inward power into outward performance. He has surrendered sovereignty for spectacle. And once that need for validation exists, it can be manipulated. Worse, showing off puts you on a schedule that no longer serves your strategy. You no longer act when it's optimal. You act when others are watching. Your timing is no longer yours. Your silence is broken. You stop executing and start performing. You confuse the reaction you receive with the result you intended. And in that confusion, your strategy dies not by direct opposition, but by attention. The idea is shared too early. The plan is leaked for praise. The goal is announced and judged before it has matured. In Machiavellian politics, this is not. Ambition, it's premature commitment. Premature commitment is a death sentence. You may think that confidence is shown through volume, but ... Machiavelli would disagree. True confidence is silent. It doesn't plead for trust, it commands. Respect. It doesn't need confirmation or applause. It moves with such focus and precision that its strength becomes self-evident, undeniable and unshakable. Consider how this applies to leadership. Loud leader, the one who speaks excessively, justifies every decision and reacts to every criticism. He may appear present, even relatable, but presence alone is not power. Accessibility is not authority. In fact, the more he speaks, the more he explains, the more he becomes common known, readable, predictable. Now contrast that with the quiet leader, the one who listens more than he talks, the one who withholds more than he shares. His silence creates tension, his restraint builds weight. When he finally speaks, his words feel carved in stone, not because of volume, but because of scarcity. His voice cuts through noise because it was never part of the noise to begin with. And that's no accident. That's design. The silence increases. Perceived value. Every unnecessary word you speak lowers it. The more you talk, the more you give away. And the more you give away, the more others take for granted. The man who constantly explains himself is lowering his price, reducing his worth one justification at a time. But the man who withholds, the man who lets mystery speak louder than explanation, he raises his price. He becomes rare in power. Rarity is leverage. This principle applies not only in leadership, but also in negotiation. In any negotiation, the first to speak often loses ground. Why? Because every word is a reveal. The more you reveal, the more you concede sometimes without realizing it. But if you can endure the tension, if you can hold the silence, if you can resist the itch to fill the air with noise, those will do it for you. They will speak to fill the gap. They will reveal what they fear, what they want, what they hide, while you remain still, unmoved, unreadable. They will overplay their hand while guessing at yours. Machiavelli didn't just teach politics. He taught human nature. He understood something most still miss. People are deeply uncomfortable with what they can't define, and that discomfort, it compels them to act, to explain, to speak, to expose, and all you have to do is nothing. Just watch, stay composed, and let their fear of not knowing become the very weapon they use to destroy themselves. So ask yourself, when you post your goals, when you brag about your moves, when you reveal your relationships, your income, your next step, who are you doing it for? Is it truly for progress, or is it for praise? Is it driven by discipline, or by the craving for comfort? 'Cause the man who needs to be seen, who needs the world to watch, will always be enslaved by the gaze of others. He will act for reaction, not for outcome. And slowly he'll trade power for attention. But the man who watches everything and reveals nothing, he becomes untouchable. And this is why Machiavellian silence is so rare, because it demands discipline. It demands that you become immune to the need for approval, that you no longer feed on validation, but instead find strength in self-containment. It demands that you stop trying to be known and instead become unknowable. The unknown is feared. The predictable is controlled, so choose carefully who you wish to be. And remember, power is not just in what you do, it's in what others believe you might do. If they can't see your next move, they can't prepare for your strategy, they can't define or categorize you, ... they will hesitate. In that hesitation, you gain your opening. That hesitation becomes your advantage. Pause becomes your victory. It's not the showman who becomes king. It's the shadow figure, the one who appears only when the move is already made. One who is always 10 steps ahead quietly, who says nothing until it's already over. Machiavelli would not tell you to be invisible. He would tell you to be deliberate, to let them believe you're playing checkers, when in truth, you're playing chess, to smile while holding a blade, to nod while keeping score, to speak only when your silence has finished its work. This is the power of not showing off. This is the power of presence without performance. Say nothing. Watch everything. And move only when it serves the wind. If there is one thread that runs through every fall from power, every ... collapse of influence, every dethroned king, every defeated general, it always traces back to this one truth. They were seen too clearly, too early, by too many. They traded mystery for attention, and in doing so, they gave their enemies everything they needed to bring them down. Machiavelli understood that power, like gold, loses its value when it's too common. When it's scattered, displayed, and made easily available, it becomes cheap, just another object in circulation. The man who constantly puts himself on display, who broadcasts every move, every ambition, every minor victory, floods the market with his own image. The market inevitably loses interest. Because when you are everywhere, you are nowhere. You're no longer rare. You are no longer revered. You are now familiar. And familiarity kills fear. You become background noise. You become part of the scenery. And make no mistake, you cannot be both revered and familiar. You must choose. Reverence is built on scarcity, on distance, on calculated presence. And Machiavelli knew this with ruthless clarity. He warned that rulers must learn not only how, not to be good, but something far subtler, how not to be accessible. Power demands boundaries. Sovereign must be known by his results, not his explanations. He must be felt, not followed. His impact should remain even in his absence. His influence should echo after he leaves the room. That kind of presence. The kind that bends attention without demanding. It cannot be built by raising your voice. It is not constructed by louder speeches, more posts, more meetings, or more re-meetings, or more smiles. It is built by restraint, by making every move intentional, every word strategic, every appearance count. Because the moment you begin chasing visibility, you surrender the one element that gives your power weight: mystique. And mystique is not created by hiding. It is created by discipline, by revealing only what advances your objective on nothing more, by keeping people uncertain, not out of malice, but out of mastery. It's like watching a brilliant actor on stage. He doesn't need a long speech to steal the scene. Sometimes it's just a glance, a pause, a breath held a second too long. It says more than any monologue ever could. The same applies in life. The person who speaks after silence controls the tempo. The one who listens longer understands deeper. And the one who holds back gains leverage while others waste theirs in the open. This is not some shallow tactic. It's a worldview. In Machiavelli's world, every interaction is a contest of control, and in that contest, noise is a liability. Emotion is a liability. But above all, the desire to be admired is the most dangerous liability of all. Because once you require praise, you become addicted to performance. And performance is not power, it's a poor imitation of it. It's a distraction, a mask, a weakness. But the man who rises in silence, he is not only more effective, he is more dangerous, because nobody sees him coming. He is the silent architect. The one who builds without announcing is the one who studies his enemies while they proudly advertise their strategies. The one who waits not passively, but patiently until every piece is in place. 8. And when he finally strikes, it's not loud. It's not emotional. It's surgical, precise, unstoppable. So clean that people call it genius, but it was never genius. It was patience, silence, control, and that kind of control. It terrifies people because they can't prepare for what they can't predict, can't resist what they can't see. They can't retaliate against a force they don't fully understand. This is the psychology of fear. And Machiavelli understood it with brutal clarity. He wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved, because love is given freely. Fear must be built. It is crafted, designed, layered with care. And one of its key ingredients is uncertainty. When people don't know what you'll do next, ... they brace themselves. When they're unsure how they don't challenge you. When they sense something powerful behind your silence, something deliberate, composed, and unreadable, they hesitate, they second guess, they hold back. Because silence, when charged with purpose, speaks louder than any performance. It creates an invisible line they dare not cross. And in that invisible boundary lies your strength. That's the paradox of modern communication. We live in a world that encourages constant sharing, status updates, confessions, declarations. It's praised. As honesty, it feels intimate. It feels freeing. But what few realize is that the more we share, the less we are respected. Why? Because what is accessible is disposable. What is exposed becomes exploitable. Power is not about feeling seen. It's not about feeling heard. It's about lasting. And to last, you must train yourself to hold back when others are releasing, to conceal what others rush to confess, to execute silently while others are busy announcing. Most importantly, you must understand this truth. Not every truth deserves an audience. Not everything real needs to be revealed. There is a critical difference between transparency and weakness. And the world, especially those competing with you, are always listening, always watching, always waiting for the slip. Machiavelli would say, show only what is useful. Disclose only what builds your position. Never confuse openness with strength. Because while you're broadcasting your plans, convinced that honesty equals power, someone else is watching. They're not reacting. They're not challenging. You're quietly calculating, studying your words, identifying your rhythm, learning your weaknesses. They will not argue. They will not warn you. They will not show themselves. They will wait. They will smile. And when your guard is down, when you're busy collecting likes, validation, praise, they will strike. That is the cold beauty of real power. It is never loud. It is never rushed. It is never needy. So you must ask yourself, do you want recognition? Or do you want results? Because in most cases, you can't have both. The man who is recognized too early becomes a symbol. Symbols are targets. The man who builds too loudly invites sabotage. The man who feeds on applause will eventually compromise his principles to keep it. But the man who is content to go unseen, unpraised, unnoticed, he becomes something else entirely. He becomes a shadow, moving silently behind the headlines. He becomes a force, detached from the crowd's opinion, undistracted by attention. His power doesn't depend on exposure, it thrives in its absence. Machiavelli didn't crave fame. He studied it, manipulated it, but he never believed in it as a goal, because he knew fame is a trap. It demands that you maintain a version of yourself the public admires, even when it costs you the very essence that made you powerful in the first place. The world will tell you to be visible, to be loud, to be undeniable. But the master knows, the more you are seen, the more you are scrutinized. And the more you are scrutinized, the easier you are to dismantle. So be careful what you reveal. Be cautious of what you display. Because the man addicted to being seen may win the crowd, but he will never control the game. And Machiavelli never wrote for the crowd. He wrote for the player, for the ruler, the quiet strategist who understands the deepest truth of all. Power is not what people see. Power is what people can't see. And fear, it isn't born from noise. It is born from uncertainty. What makes a man powerful is not how loudly he speaks, but how carefully he listens. Not how much he reveals, but how much he withholds. Not the applause he gathers, but the moves he makes. When no one is watching, Machiavelli saw this in the courts and councils, on the battlefields and in back rooms. Those who endured, those who truly ruled, they were not the ones who performed. They were the ones who planned, in silence, in shadows, without needing recognition to validate their position. That is the essence of true strength, and the final warning he offers to anyone who wishes to win. Showing off is not just a mistake, is a fundamental misunderstanding of how power operates in the real world. The crowd may cheer for the man who shines brightly in the spotlight, but applause fades quickly. The one who endures, the one who truly holds influences, the man who understands this one. Critical truth. Every moment of visibility comes at a price. What is that price? Exposure, vulnerability, predictability, and for the Machiavellian mind. These are debts never to be accepted unless the payoff is not just likely, but certain. This kind of mind doesn't gamble on hope or ego. It waits. It calculates. It strikes only when the odds are absolute. Today, most people live entirely in the open. They broadcast every emotion, every opinion, every ambition to the world as if transparency were a virtue. But is it? Or is it a trap disguised as honesty? Exposure is not strength. It is surrender. Show them your goals, and they'll mock them. You show them your process, and they'll steal it. Show them your wealth, and they'll begin to scheme against it. Every single thing you reveal, no matter how minor, becomes an invitation to judgment, to envy, to resistance. But what happens when you stay quiet? When you become unreadable, you take back control. You hold the advantage because no one can attack what they cannot define. No one can block a move they don't see coming. No one can destroy what remains hidden from sight. That is not weakness. That is design. It is architecture for a life of strategic power. The world tells you to be transparent, but Machiavelli tells you to be selective. The world encourages authenticity, but Machiavelli suggests strategy. The world praises those who are admired, but Machiavelli warns that admiration fades, while respect and fear, when rightly earned, remain. And how is that respect earned? It's not through grand displays, not through impassioned speeches. It is earned through consistency, restraint, and force deployed only when it serves a purpose greater than pride. Invisibility is not your enemy. Indifference is. People do not ignore what they can't understand, but they do ignore what becomes too familiar. So let them wonder. Let them guess. Let them think they know you while you quietly and relentlessly redefine who you are, where you're headed and what you are becoming. Machiavelli taught that the prince must sometimes appear virtuous without being so, because perception is not a mirror, it is a weapon. You do not owe the world a full, unfiltered version of yourself. You owe the world results, and results do not require decoration, do not require justification. You speak more clearly and powerfully than your words ever could. This is the enduring lesson for those who wish to build something that lasts. Move in silence. Build in silence. Win in silence. And when you choose to speak, let it be rare, let it be intentional. Let it carry the weight of all that you chose not to say. That is what gives a voice its power, not its volume, but its scarcity. The man who shows off today may impress a room, but the man who stays silent, he shapes the world. Understand this. Legacy is not created by noise. It is created by motion. Quiet, deliberate, unstoppable. The kings of history were not crowned by the crowd. They were crowned by their ability to rule without needing to be seen, to make decisions that shaped futures without ever explaining themselves to those who would never truly understand. Stop. You don't need to be famous. You don't need a massive following. You don't need endless praise. What you truly need is to be effective. And effectiveness, real lasting effectiveness, begins exactly where the desperate need for attention ends. So walk away from the blinding spotlight. Withdraw your constant urge to prove yourself to everyone around you. Master your tongue. Choose your words carefully. Temper your public relations and focus your mind on what genuinely matters, not the image you project. It's not the fleeting impression you leave, but the deep, lasting impact you create. When your silence becomes louder than all their noise combined, you've won. When your actions echo through rooms you've never even stepped into, you've won. When they realize they've been playing your game without ever even hearing your rules, you've won. That is the ultimate rule. That is the quiet victory. And this is the very lesson Machiavelli tried to teach us long ago. For the noise of the world drowned out his wisdom. If you've listened this far, it means something inside you is already shifting. A part of you is exhausted, tired of the noise, tired of endless explanations, tired of needing anyone's permission to be powerful. And now, something deeper is waking up. You've come to understand that being admired means nothing if it requires you to become predictable and lose your authenticity. True respect begins when you no longer negotiate your presence to fit into someone else's narrow expectations. So now, I ask you, are you ready to be doubted, misunderstood, even resented because you chose strategy over spectacle? Are you willing to walk the silent path, knowing it's colder, lonelier, but far more dangerous and far more rewarding? Are you prepared to leave behind the applause and embrace the power that comes from quiet strength? If this message resonates with you, if something inside you clicked just now, write in the comments, "I move in silence." Let's see how many of you are done performing, how many of you are ready to stop showing off and start winning. And don't stop here. Watch the next video. Preparation for a world that doesn't reward the loud, but the lethal. I'll see you there.